Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be working with a card kit from Close to My Heart today. This is the Hawthorn card making kit, and I'm going to give you a quick look at what is included. So it comes with some really nice instructions, details on how to cut each of the pages so that you can get 15 of these cards made with everything included. So I'm actually going to split this into two videos. I have made the 15 cards, 5 of each of the 3 designs. In this first video, I'm going to take you through how to make 1 of each of those 3, and then in the second video I have used my leftovers to create 5 more designs, just to give those of you who have this some more ideas and ways that you can use it. So there I am giving you a look through at what was included. You do get 15 card bases and envelopes, 2 sheets of pattern paper, which is double-sided, 2 of the Paprika cardstock, which does have a lighter and darker side to it, as well as the gray has a lighter and darker side, and then you get 3 sheets of the white. Now, in addition to the kit, I have also purchased the matching ink. I picked up Saffron, Paprika, and Charcoal, and that is what was recommended to coordinate with this kit because of the coloring. So there I'm giving you a quick look at the instructions, and as I said, this does give you details on exactly how to cut this pattern paper so that you can make the most out of it in order to get these 15 cards made. And as I mentioned, I did get an additional 5 cards made from what I had left over, and I still probably could have done a few more. I do have a little bit of the pattern paper left and a little bit of the cardstock. I will show you that at the end of the second video just to give you an idea of what I have left over. It's not a whole lot. So I'm giving you a quick look as I cut each of the papers here, just the layout and then how I'm going through and cutting all of them. I do want to quickly mention that this card kit was actually from the previous catalog, so it is still available at the moment, but there are very few of them left. So if this is something that you think you would like, I would grab it rather quickly. It is also on sale now. It is around $35. I will link it for you below. As I've mentioned before, I am a new consultant for Close to My Heart, and if you don't already have a consultant, I would greatly appreciate your using my link if you decide to pick anything up. So here for card number 1, I'm going to get started on the stamping as well as the coloring. I have pulled out this cluster with the pretty leaves and pine cones, and I'm going to stamp this out on one of the extra pieces of the white cardstock that was included. I'm using the charcoal ink, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp this out 5 times because I'm going to make 5 of each of the cards. I'm only going to show you one of them though, just for the sake of time. So I did use my MISTI for this because I knew I was going to be using the entire image and not covering anything up, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting a nice clear impression. For the rest of them, you'll see that I will just use my stamp blocks. If you don't have a MISTI but you want to stamp this out, my suggestion to you is to juice that up really well on your stamp, especially if it's your first time inking it up. And then you don't have to put a ton of pressure on it, but you do want to lay your hands over that and just let it hold on top of the paper so that it can really soak that ink in. Here I'm stamping out this thanks so much sentiment. I've used the Paprika for that. I'm again going to stamp that 5 times as well. And then here I've quickly included the coloring that I did on these. I am doing my best to match the colors that they have there on the sample you see off to the side. They suggested using some watercolor pencils, and I don't have any of those on hand at the moment. I know I have some somewhere, but I can't seem to put my fingers on them. So I've pulled out my Prismacolors, and I will list the colors that I'm using for you on my blog post. I will also list the dimensions for all of the cut papers for you as well, for those of you who don't already have these instructions included with the kit. So that way if you want to recreate this with a different stamp, you will have all the dimensions to do that. So I have gone ahead and trimmed everything out using the matching dies. I've used the banner on the sentiment, and then there is a matching die to cut out that little cluster as well. I'm going to place down this background panel. This is trimmed to the full A2 size of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, just using my ATG gun to attach everything here. Then I'm going to layer these two pieces of cardstock together. So this smaller paprika piece is 2 1/2 by 3 3/4, and I'm going to layer that on top of the white cardstock, which is 2 3/4 by 4 inches. And then this little strip of wood grain came from the edge strip on the 12 by 12 pattern paper. That is 2 1/2 by 1/2 inch. I've grabbed my string here and just wrapped that around twice, adding a little knot here in the front. And then I'm going to pop this up using some foam tape. So I'm going to be using both 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch foam tape. And then once I'm happy with that positioning there, I'll peel away the backing and I'm going to place this down on top. I'll grab one of my little clusters here and one of my sentiments. I'm going to pop that sentiment up using some of that 1/4 inch foam tape. And then I'll lay everything out. And once I'm happy with the placement, I'll add some ATG to the back of that cluster. And peel away the backing and place down my sentiment. And that will complete the first card. For the second card, I'm going to be using what they call a rock and roll stamp technique. And this was a lot of fun. I really love the two-tone look that it gives. So the first thing I'm going to do here is ink up my stamp really, really well with the Saffron ink, getting that really nice and juicy. And then I'm going to take this over to my Paprika ink and I'm just going to roll the edges of the stamp. You'll see a little better here. There you can see how some of it's yellow, but just the edges are sort of that orange-red color. And that's just going to give me a little bit of a two-tone and it sort of variegates it for me. Again, just pressing down firmly on that to make sure I get a nice crisp image. I'm not too terribly worried about the center because I am going to layer some pine cones, but I want to try and get the best impression that I can. So I'll show you that one more time. I'm going to get this nice and juicy with that yellow ink, and then I will pull in some of the paprika just on the edges and place that down. Next, I'm going to stamp out my sentiment, Grateful for You. And I'm working on some of the Paprika cardstock, and I'm going to stamp that with my charcoal ink. And then lastly, I'm going to grab that pine cone and stamp that out with my charcoal ink as well. I'm going to stamp this one 10 times because I'll need 2 for each of the cards. I've gone ahead and trimmed all those out with the coordinating dies. Here I'm going to get my card layered together. So this first paprika layer is 5 by 3 3/4. The yellow strip is 5 by 2 inches. No, it's not. The yellow strip is 5 by 3/4 of an inch. And then this larger gray strip is 5 by 2 inches. I'm just tearing off about a 1/2 inch from one edge there. And I have not actually done this technique before. I really love the look of that torn edge. I didn't realize that this paper had a white sort of core to it, but I think that gives such a pretty look. So here I'll grab my cluster, and I've got 2 of my pine cones. Just double checking my layout there, and then I'm going to cut off 2 small pieces of that 1/4 inch foam tape and place those behind the pine cones. And then I'll pop those down on top. And then again, I'll add some of that foam tape behind my sentiment. Double check my layout here, and then get everything glued in place. Lastly, I'm going to grab this twine and tie that into a bow. And from my stash, I'm going to pull in some 3M glue dots. These are left over from some old paper pumpkin kits. I have tons of them, but they are perfect to use for gluing down sequins or bows like this. And I'll get that pressed in place. And that's going to complete the second card. For card number 3, I'm going to get started on my sentiment here. So I am using that Paprika cardstock as well as the Paprika ink. And in the center of these strips, I'm going to go ahead and stamp out "So Blessed to Have You." I'm using my grid mat here to line these up, make sure I get that nice and straight, and doing my best to get it in the center. And then there is a little dashed line stamp that came with this set as well. And so I'm going to do a border of this. And it is short, so I'm going to have to do it 3 times. Just doing my best to get it lined up and keep that nice and straight. And I'll do one border across the top as well as a border across the bottom. While I've got that paprika ink out, I'm also going to stamp out the acorn, and I'm going to stamp that 5 times. So I've gone ahead and trimmed out all those acorns, and now I'm going to be stamping directly on the front panel. So I've again got that stitch stamp, and I'm going to place that in the center as best as I can, about 2 inches down on my panel. And this panel is the full front of an A2 sized card, so it is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'll go ahead and give you all the other measurements as well. I'm also going to have a stripe of gray, which is 4 1/4 by 1/4 inch. And then I have a blue pattern paper, which is 4 1/4 by 1 3/4 inches. And then the Paprika sentiment is 4 1/4 by 3/4 inches. So here I'm doing sort of a second stamping technique. I'm going to take that paprika with the acorn and I'm going to place that right in the middle. Then I'm going to quickly lift that, move it over, and I'll just use the shadow of what's left there, and it gives this really beautiful pinkish color. Now don't worry if when you do this you don't have a perfect stamp. You do want to hold that down like I've mentioned before just to make sure the ink soaks in the paper, but as it dries you will get a really nice smooth look to that ink. And of course here off to the other side I'm using that saffron ink and stamping a 3rd acorn. Now I'm going to get everything put together. So I'm placing this smaller gray stripe along the bottom, and that is about 1/4 inch up. And then directly above that, I'm going to add my blue panel. And directly above that, I will add my sentiment. I'm going to grab some of that twine, and I have sped this up quite a bit for you here. I am just terrible at tying bows. So I'm going to just run this around that panel and tie a bow up towards that top left corner. And once I'm happy with that, again, I'll grab one of those 3M glue dots and just place that underneath my knot to keep that nice and tight down. I'm going to grab one of these trimmed out acorns, add some of that foam tape behind it. I'm going to place that right on top of the one that I stamped in the middle. And then I'll add some ATG to the back, and I'm going to place this panel on top of my card base. And that will complete the 3rd card. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.